Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Family Business Podcast. I am joined today by Guillermo Salazar, who we are speaking to all the way from Texas. Firstly, Guillermo, welcome to the show. Great for you to join us today.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you very much for inviting.
Now, you are a family business consultant. You've been providing advice to family businesses for 20 plus years. We're going to be talking today about what family businesses can do to help better prepare their next generation. Given where we are, we're recording this during the global pandemic, so I'm sure there's some interesting stuff that we're going to be covering. But before we sort of get into that, do you want to just give a little bit more on your background and how you came to be doing what you're doing today?
Well, thank you. Basically, what I've been doing is that trying to find out some answers to the questions I've been made myself. I come from a family business, and I start wondering how can it be possible to work with this bunch of crazy people, which is my family. Uh-huh. And I am architect. I come from a family business construction company, and then I start to figure out that there will be some knowledge related to how to work with family businesses. And then it was back more than 20 years ago, I started to study. And eventually I had a degree in family therapy. And then I started to work with families in business. Uh-huh. So I found out that most of the solutions that can be work as a way to depict the complexity of the family businesses was focus on family dynamics. Uh-huh. And working with that in mind, I've been creating a methodology to help the families in business to, in some cases, to just push them to do the little step that can help them to evolve. In other cases, go deeper in real complex structures to help them to do the what they need to do to go to the next level. So that's basically what I've been doing in the last 2 decades.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you've seen a lot in those 2 decades, but perhaps nothing quite as severe as we are seeing at the moment in terms of, as obviously as a global pandemic is still running rife across the world. How has that impacted the families that you've been working with? I mean, we were speaking off air about how sort of technological advances have been sped up as a result of the fact we're being forced into lockdown scenarios a lot of times. But what else are you seeing from the families that you're working with?
Well, we've been seeing different scenarios. Well, basically depending on the kind of industry you are in. Mm-hmm. We had clients that had a tough moment, but not that hard. Basically those that are in the retail industry, mining, energy, and I would say that some specific services related with technology are the ones that are being hit in the less, or we'll say. But the rest of the families in business are having a real tough time on trying to understand what's still going on around them. And the other thing is that this situation has increased the conflict and the way to understand one generation with the other in terms of how do they interpret the environment right now. And it's all related with that generational cultural frame that we've been witnessing in the last years, but now it's very evident. Somehow this is being increasing this huge difference between the way of seeing in different generations.
Yeah. And I guess the current situation, as well as being a catalyst for change from a technological and economic standpoint, it's also a catalyst for change within that family business, as you say, that it's kind of squashed together that potential difference in viewpoint from one generation to the next. And I mean, the topic of what we're going to be covering today is how family businesses can develop that next generation. But it's probably worth stating at the outset that it's a cooperative thing rather than, everything being laid on the plate for the next gen. It's got to be something that is for the overall benefit of the business. and the
Yeah.
family involved.
Yes, that's absolutely what's going on. For example, just to mention one situation that we can understand. Uh, Recently, we have been seeing some statistics of how different generations interpret what's going on with the COVID-19, and how do they expect to go back to the normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when you ask a baby boomer or a Gen X, which is the generation I belong to, uh, and when you compare those points of view with the ones of the millennials or the Gen Z or whatever name we are giving them, there is a huge difference on what they
Mm.
consider of the situation. They, the I would like to focus on the millennials, which is a very way to understand and identify this generation. They feel more comfortable than a baby boomer or a Gen X. They feel that this situation is something that could have an outcome, that it's better to fit for them in the future than to the previous generation. And by the end, they feel better than the other generation. So uh, saying that, the way that you approach to the same problem, it's always something that you have to understand to manage among the different intentions and the dialogue, the conversation that you can generate, because not everybody's feeling the same kind of pressure, the same kind of fear, or the same kind of opportunity feeling.
Yeah. And I think that I'm guessing you see within the families you're working with that difference where perhaps one generation is sat there thinking, well, this is terrible. I'm quite fearful for what the future holds for my family and my business. And yet there could be others in a different generation who are going, this is a fantastic opportunity for us to innovate, to drive the business forward, to create something new going forward. And balancing that, I'm guessing, is pretty tough, because you can't change how somebody inherently feels or is concerned about something in a very easy way.
Yes, yes. In fact, what we have discovered is that we have three basic scenarios where you can find a way to approach to the same problem. We will have the protagonist,
Mm-hmm.
that they are the real creators of change. They can be innovators, creative. Sometimes they're wrong, but they are very resilient and they can move forward. You don't have to be a millennial to have that kind of attitude, uh, but you have to have the attitude of a millennial if you want to go through. Then the other scenario that you will have are the adapted, that they are basically that with a mindset to follow the protagonist. They will see, if that work, I will follow it. Otherwise, I will stay where I am. And those are people that want to be very sure of what's happening before they do the change. And they understand that they need to do a change, but they let's wait to see what happens first.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I would say that this is the medium size of the universe that we work with. People
Yeah.
that really need to understand that something is going to change, but let me first see if that's something that will work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, the third scenarios, are the witnesses. This is the people that resist the change. They want to go back to the previous life.
Mm-hmm.
They for any means they want to uh, um, criticize and act in a way that everything must to move back again to where it was. So we are still seeing less and less and less people like this in every day of this
Mm-hmm.
pandemic situation.
Yeah.
It's definitely we're moving to a new scenario, and
Yeah.
either you are a protagonist or you are a witness, or you are an adapted of what you are seeing.
Yeah. And I guess those people who either want everything to stay as it is or go back to how it was beforehand, as this pandemic and situation plays out and progresses, they're being shown whether that's realistic or not, because we hear fantastic examples of businesses that have pivoted into doing something completely different, or have completely adapted the way in which they deliver their services. Again, you and I were talking beforehand about how we deliver our services has changed because of the use of technology and the lack of ability to sit face to face now. And those businesses that just freeze and don't do anything and don't adapt and don't change, I'm guessing, are the ones that perhaps aren't going to be around for a very long time, because they're just not adapting with what's happening with the world.
Yeah. In fact, I have a client. It's very funny because when all of this situation start, this particular one is a family business. They have like 50 or 60 hotels here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked them, okay, in the first family council we had, aren't you afraid? Don't you have fear? I mean, I will be very preoccupied of what's going on in this business. They say, you know what? We've been in business for 70 years. We know what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we are going through this, and we will have to do whatever we need to. But we are pretty sure that we are going to overcome the situation.
Mm.
So that's one of the points that we have seen also on the families in business resilience, which is basically a model that we have been replying in every situation. They have three facts that is really helping them to move forward. The first is that they have a structure where the hierarchy and the governance, which is a word that many families doesn't like, but the way that they control the power is very, very clear for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important because we are in the middle of a war, and in the war you need to know who is in charge, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that they have very clear. The other thing is that they have a high level of communication with everybody in the system. The communication goes in the proper way, with the proper channels, with the proper information.
Yeah.
And that's a very important situation that they have to live with in the system and out of the system. And the other one is that they have faith. And when they have faith, they know that things are going to get better after this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main fuel that they have right now, because otherwise, if you don't have faith, you will succumb
Yeah.
on whatever scenario you will have.
Mm. And we've spoken obviously about the acceleration of things that perhaps would have been taken over a different period of time in old normal circumstances, so pre-COVID. One of those, I guess, is also the development of the next generation within a business, and perhaps that's been brought into focus, that needs to be something that is prioritized as part of continuity plans, as part of the transition to that future next generation, given that the world we're again going to emerge into is going to be a different place. How's that sort of shaping your own work in that space with the sort of preparation of next gen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's been affected. I would say that every process, every plan that we had pre-pandemic scenario, after 4 months of living in a situation that no one could see come in, I will say that yes, all the processes and all the plan have to be adapted on what we have right now. And when you start to see what can you do to improve what you have been doing with the families, you will see that this is a part of the history that they believe in. Just like this family I told you of 70 years in the business.
Mm-hmm.
When you recreate the storytelling of the family, and when you start to see what are the main milestones they've been through the whole history of this family in business, you will see that there's no always a way of rose and happiness and success the whole time. It's been a roller coaster way, and every family has moments in their life that they have to understand that there is a challenge that put to work the best of them. They understand that in every challenge they have to use their values in order to do the right decisions to overcome this obstacle. So what we have right now is part of the history that they are going through. And yes, you could say, okay, most of the business I know that have been in a hard time, that you will say that the history ends here. But no, if you can see what families are doing, you will see that they have faith that the history will continue in the next year. So what they have now is a part of the history that they are living in the way that everyone wants to be part of this history. So what we have to do every time that we want to calm the family on the situation is then to focus on what can they do as an individual to add value to this part of the history, and try to see if they can fit in a proper way that the final outcome of the history that we are trying to say, we have a happy end, or we will have a situation that we don't like. So when you start to understand that you are part of a plot that we are building together, then you start to realize, okay, I need to put the best of me to help them and to help me as an individual, as a member of the family, because somehow this will pass.
Mm-hmm. And you've got an example of a case study, if you like, of
Yeah.
how you're approaching this with a family, and obviously it's on an anonymous basis, but can you give us a feel for what that looks like?
Yes, I wanted to talk about this case of we will call them the Jameson. It's a disguised name. Uh, they they this is a case of a family that is the typical one that start from the real beginning of how to do a business. The founder was we will call him Mac Jason. He started in a modest grocery store in California, and with his wife Martha, they started the business, and they really have an eye for opportunities. And this is the kind of entrepreneurs that turn an initial venture into a real solid retail organization. And 40 years later, they really have a great family business, because all of the children, they were start to be involved in the business. They have 5 children, and what they created was a situation in the family where where Mac uh, he really neglected the family. He was so devoted to the business that by the end of his life, he was one of those famous persons that say, "I would rather spend more life in my family, but in the business, I really regret that." Blah blah blah. But this is the kind of person. Okay, so the next generation happens to decide that they will not make the same mistake with their families, and what they decide was that they ban to talk about the business in their own houses.
Okay.
So the third generation, they grow with no knowledge of the business, with no willing to be part of, and their parents protect them from the business mindset, and they let them to live free and do whatever they wanted, because they were very privileged of be part of a wealthy family, and they don't have to be committed with the role as the next generation in the business. So what we have now is that a second generation that it's very devoted to the business, but has no possibility to design a succession plan, because the next generation doesn't know what's going on in the business. So they will be heirs or owners of something that they don't understand, that they don't know, and of course they don't love. Because if you don't know, you don't love. So when they call us, they explain us the situation. They wanted us to make them love the family business, and basically they wanted us to do something that they should have done in previously. Those third generation members were basically millennials. They were around their mid 20s, almost 30s, and we started from the beginning. We started to do what we should have to do, is to help them to know the company. So when we start to work with them in a program, we design a 5-step process where we help them in 5 different phases to go through a first part of discovering what they have, then know what they have. Then, if they will be good enough, they will represent the family business.
Uh-huh.
Then, if they will good enough, they will contribute to the family business. And in the last stage, they will govern the family business. So the 2 first steps will let you go through a milestone in the program that will give them the right. That was something that we agree to work in this milestone. The right to be heirs or to be owners,
Uh-huh.
because once you have the knowledge and you have discovered what you had, then we will start to say, okay, you are now prepared to love what you are going to hear. So to evaluate that, what we asked them was, okay, you have to present us the family business. And I have to feel that you feel it.
Uh-huh.
And you really have to make me get emotions
Yeah.
in that speech.
Uh-huh.
And they did. And all of them, the 15 members, all of them could really make your feeling that they will loving it because they knew it. So we call this milestone the minimum checkpoint to be an owner.
Right. Okay.
Everybody have to be an owner because they will be owners. So
Uh-huh.
once you have that, then we prepare them to the next step, which is I want you to be an ambassador of this family business. So you will need those skills. Basically, you will need to communicate. You will be a good communicator. Yeah, I want you to do at least one presentation in a public place talking about our business. And we had opportunities in those FBI meetings. They will 3 or 4 of them will presenting their history of the family. So check. Now you are an ambassador. Now you are the person that can represent us. And then we start to inviting them to certain committees in the business where they will contribute with their ideas of what can do with the main objective that we're looking for them, which is innovation.
Uh-huh.
How can you help us to innovate in the business? And it was a total success. And eventually, and it hasn't happened yet, we are still waiting for them to meet the requirements to be members of the board of directors, which is the last step. If you
Uh-huh.
want to really govern what you own, you need to be the best director that we can have. And you will be asked for the same requirements of an external member of the board of directors. So we are still in this phase.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is that we started with the 15 owners. Now they are worthy to be owners. But now we only have 2 or 3 candidates for the last stage.
Right.
They will decide where they want to stay.
Uh-huh.
It's all voluntary. You cannot oblige them. In certain way, we do oblige them to have the first milestone. Like,
Yeah.
you need to have this one. But the next one, it will depend on you.
Mm.
You have all of our help, but you will need to do it because you want to do it. It's the
Uh-huh.
only way that it works.
Yeah.
And that's a way. That's a way to do it.
And over what sort of time frame has that been delivered? How long a period is that over?
I will say that if we are lucky enough to have the first candidate to be worthy of having the last test, it will be 3.5 years.
Yeah.
We've been working with, but it will depend on every one of the.
Mm. And when you spoke to, or the family approached you, were they aware that the work that is needed to get to the point where you are now is going to take that long?
Yes.
Because it reminds me of the fairy tale or the romantic comedy movies you see where they want to take a potion to fall in love with somebody, and it turns out that over time they fall in love with them anyway, and they didn't need the potion in the first place. It's taking time and understanding the story and the history of the business and the various different roles that they can play within that business is part of that natural process of falling in love with it, rather than trying to force the issue by saying, well, if you tell me you love the business, then you can become an owner of it, because it's just a potion that's going to last for that sort of presentation bit. Whereas what you actually want is that inherent feeling of emotion towards the business in order for them to be effective players within the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes time. I mean, as you mentioned, falling in love, you can fall in love in just 1 hour, or you can really create the basement of forever lasting love, and it will have it time to be organically authentical. So yes, but the first time I would say it can take you to 3 to 6 months to develop the real boundary of the members of the next generation with the family business myth and philosophy. That's basically what we create. We define very, very well with the family what's the myth that we want to preserve. Because we have to understand what we are modifying on the way that we receive this myth. We're going to work with this at the next generation, and we are going to pass to the next generation our interpretation of this myth. So this is the way that we create that love. For example, we have another client we work with. They have a museum. They were crafters of copper elements, and they created a museum of copper. And the test to know if they were worthy of being part of the family business was to guide the tour of the people through the museum and tell the story.
Wow.
By heart.
Yeah.
That was the test for them, for example. What an excellent opportunity to see if you love what you have.
Yeah.
For example.
Because if you're kind of trudging around with your head down, sort of, oh, well, this is that. It's going to be pretty obvious that you're not feeling it. It's a very practical way to understand that, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can see with the tourists that go to the museum, when they feel the emotion, man, you have a real owner because they love what they have. Yeah. And this is something that you can do just discovering this history. What do they have? Who are the key persons? What's the market they are in? What the products that they are creating? Why do they belong to this history? And of course, that creates identity. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you need for a next generation owner. So once you create that, you can build other things. But if you don't have that, it will be very hard to force them to be part of this project, of this family business project. So what have been happening these days? Previously to all of this process, the family must have all of the structures that will support a program like this, because this is something that must be, as you can imagine, very well structured, very well planned, and there must be a guide or a mentor or a sponsor for this kind of processes. So the second generation, they have to organize a committee from the family council that will lead and will approve, that will design, and they will have to do the test, everything that must to be done as a real school. So this is a very important project, the most important project of the family council. But you need to have the family council, and all of the 5 members of the family council must to agree. They have to share the same dream, that this is something that is going to work. And for having a family council, you should have a board members of the company that they are running that should be working too. So whatever you need real structure to support this kind of projects in the family.
And I guess what we're seeing again at the moment is a test of those structures. And I interviewed Dennis Jaffe a few weeks ago about the sort of resilience in 100-year-old businesses.
Yeah, I hear that one. That was a very good one.
Yeah, and thank you. He effectively said the same, that the strong governance structure, whatever that is, and whatever works for that particular family, is something that is present in resilient firms and resilient businesses that last over that time frame. So it's obviously being echoed in your own work as well.
Yeah, but nothing of this will work if you don't have a family council that believes in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you have a program like this for the next generation, you have to believe that you have to believe in critical thinking, because all of the conversations are going to be held in those classrooms
Mm-hmm.
where they are going to be there, because they are going to make questions and they need to ask, because it's the only way to understand the history is when you start asking.
Mm-hmm.
So it must to be a collaborative spirit among generations, and it's trust based. It's the only way to do that. So there must to be an access to information, transparency. You have to be confident that you are going to do it very well, but the next generation have to. There is a special gift that they have always, which is compassion, because the way that you approach to the history and asking questions probably will lead to difficult answers. So the confidentiality among generations is and it's very important. And the way that they understand that they are working with a very delicate but at the same time very strong information will lead to create this kind of stuff we are working with.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you will need to uh, to turn on the flame will eventually lead you to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot think in innovation in a family business if you don't have this one, if you don't have the adaptability and the speed to understand what's going on right now, but you know where your roots are
Mm-hmm.
and why you have those roots. So whatever entrepreneurial spirit, initiative, innovation you want to do, you need to know where you come from.
Yeah.
In order to be coherent with that.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, with regards to the family history, it might say that, there's a starting point here and an end point here. And if you draw a straight line in between those, then it looks like it's been a smooth ride. But by understanding the history, you can get to have those conversations about times where the family experienced troubles before, and take that faith that irrespective of the fact that there might be challenging times ahead, as a family, we have got through this before. And as a business, we have got through this before, because life isn't a straight line, is it? It's a roller coaster at the best of times. And we throw stuff like current situation into the mix as well. And it makes it even more interesting. But if you have this perception of, company established this year and we're currently this year, and therefore it's 86 years old, you lose the fact that so much has happened within that 86-year history that you can learn from, that you can take examples from. And in the family stories that you get the next generation to present back, is that kind of a warts and all story? Do they pick out the highlights? Do they look at some of the previous conflicts between, I don't know, mum and dad or other family members who've had tough times as well? How does it look?
Well, that's a very good one. It will depends it always depends on the methodology that you try to work with the family. When you recreate this history, what we try to do is to recreate the ancestral ritual of gathering around the fire
Mm-hmm.
and tell stories.
Yeah.
That's basically what we do. And we start, okay, where do we start? And usually we go back 2 or 3 generations. We try to find out where the founder of or the founders of the business start. But even back, where do they start? How do we understand what was the journey of this person that start from nothing, and now he is the responsible of the legacy that we have. And this is the journey of the hero, which is something that we have discovered with the family, that you can apply the same methodology of telling histories of the ancients members of the every tribe are the same methodology that you can apply to a family business. So when you start telling the story of a ordinary person that went through a magical world and came back with a prize, this is the history of the hero that you recreate in the family. And the hero is always part of a major plot where are other characters and other persons that have helped him to create this overcome of the challenges that he will face. So then they start to think, okay, maybe I am part of the history because everything has a sense for me now that I see the order of the history, the way it's told. And now I can find my place in the history. And now I can find my identity connected with this collective identity. And this is the way that we recreate that. But this is the process that you have to work with the family.
Yeah.
In order to make coherent the mindset of the collectiveness.
Fantastic. And the family that you gave as the example, obviously they sought you out to help with that process. If there's families that are listening now who are thinking this resonates with us, where would you suggest that they start? Is there you mentioned about the family council and the fact that it needs to be driven from a place of sort of structure and governance, but where should a family start if they're looking at this for the first time?
Well, first of all, we need leaders in the group that truly believe in what they want to do. You need to have members really committed with the creation and the continuity of the history. Most of the family have it. The way that we can see if we have the same feeling in the rest of the members of the family is to be told in a diagnosis. If we found that the family have the minimum requirements to commit in a process like this because of their level of communication, because of their level of mutual affection, and the faith in everything that they can overcome. So we will have the minimum ingredients to recreate that. So where do they start? We can start asking every member what they want to do. Once we have this individual information, we can recreate a collective common basis to work with that shared dream. And once we define that shared dream, we can recreate what's the journey that they've been going through the years and see how this journey that comes from the past is in the present connect with this future shared dreams. And then you can create the new path to the future. And how the next generations get involved in this will come with this program to help them to understand how do they connect with this history. And then you will have it. Then it's just a matter of working hard.
And taking the time that's necessary to do it properly as well. I think that's an important element to it. I think with a lot of other things, there can be a quick fix for stuff. So you can, if you're going to a lawyer for an agreement, then it's once you've got the details of that agreement down in place, it's as long as it takes to draft it and then sign it. Whereas stuff like this, where it's creating momentum over time, takes a long time to achieve. It's not something that can just be done overnight.
No, it has its piece. It has its time. Usually, you can work in a compendium of agreement in, I would say, 4 or 5 months, maybe. But it will depend on what's the work you have been doing before. It will depend of what are the beliefs of the family, and if the family doesn't believe in an agreement, it doesn't work. So the way to define what the truly belief of the members of this myth that they are creating together it's something that you can also work with. And this is where you define the shared dream, where you define the family history. And it can take you, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months to understand this mythology of the family in order to create the basis to have the agreements. So yes, it will take time. You cannot force to do it so quickly. Um, you need you need the love to flow. So that's basically the you can hurry love, as no the song says. So
Yeah.
that's it.
And the benefits of doing that and doing it well are there to see. That's the upside of this, is that yes, it takes work, but the benefits of doing it are there to see.
Yeah, well, the first one, if I can tell you that the next generation really thanks doing this, because now they know what the previous generation is expecting from them. Usually when they join the system of the family business, they have no idea what they are expecting from them. Where is my place? What can I collaborate with? What can I do? Now that you have some more coherent ideas through the agreements or to the plan or the program, they know the answer and they really want to be part of this, because now they know where they belong. That's the first one. The second one is that you create the excellent forums to help the generations talk together and have these hard conversations in an orderly way, that they have the opportunity to listen to each other and recreate what they want to do based on the ideas that they can hear from one side to the other. And the third one, I will say that always, depending on the level of commitment of the family, it will benefit all of what everything that is around the family business, all the society, all the communities. They benefit of having a family business that have a real plan of knowing where they want to go and what's their role in the system they belong to. So you will have all the philanthropy initiative, all the help to the communities, everything that really benefits to the rest of the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sums it up brilliantly. And for audience who want to find out a little bit more about you and your work, where can they get that?
Well, they can reach us at our website. It's Exaudi Online, EXAUDI online.com. We are very pleased to, if you want to follow us also in the social media, we'll find us on Twitter, in LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere.
Fantastic. And I will put links in the show notes for people to do it. And if you are watching this on YouTube, it will be in the comments section underneath the video. You can click on the link from there to find out more. But for now, thank you very much for your time. It's been a fantastic conversation, and take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay, Ross, thank you very much for the invitation again.
No worries. Take care.
Bye-bye.